My name is Jake Schmid. I'm a student at Linmar's Introduction to Psychology class. I'm in Miss Turner's first block class. This video is an explanation, outline, and demonstration of a manipulation experiment assigned by my teacher. I was to choose one person who I am in consistent contact with to be my participant. For the purpose of the experiment, the subject couldn't know what I was doing. I chose my friend, who will hereon be referred to as Nate, to be my participant. He is a friend that I am around most days of the week. He's rather healthy, both physically and mentally, and wouldn't be harmed by the experiment. We've also been friends for a decent amount of time, so he wouldn't identify my actions as strange, and would be much more likely to follow along without much hassle. For these reasons, I determined that Nate would be a great subject for this experimentation. There's 7 types of learning: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, habituation, cognitive, trial and error, social learning, and insight. I decided that the experiment itself would be to teach Nate to apply an existing common reaction to a new stimulus. The strategy is called classical conditioning. It's been proven that by constantly pairing an unconditioned stimulus with a new neutral stimulus, one can more often than not get the original unconditioned response to happen whenever the neutral stimulus is presented. I've determined that this method would be most useful. Previously, Nate and I used to have an inside joke wherein one of us would say the word wiffle, and the other person would respond with the word ball. This pre-existing condition would prove useful in my experiment. I would attempt to get Nate to say ball whenever I would blow my nose into a tissue. I would do this by constantly pairing the word wiffle with blowing my nose into a tissue. The only other method of learning that could have been used in this experiment is social learning. Social learning is a system of watching and learning. It would require another person, though, an assistant of mine. It would have applied to the situation of the experiment if Nate had observed me and my assistant do the same thing. Nate could have learned to say ball after I blew my nose, when my assistant would also say ball after I blew my nose. This is more or less the monkey see, monkey do method of learning. The other 5 methods of learning wouldn't have been as useful as these 2. Operant conditioning would not have worked in this experiment. Generally, operant conditioning uses a system of response, then stimulus. It's a system of reward and punishment. It would have been nearly impossible for Nate to guess what phrase I wanted him to use, and I wouldn't have been able to reward or punish him in a timely manner. Habituation would not have worked in this experiment either. Habituation is a type of learning where the learner learns to ignore something. This can be anything from noises to physical pain. It would be extremely difficult to apply this to the situation and almost impossible to achieve the overall goal of trying to get Nate to say ball by using this method. Cognitive would not work either. Cognitive involves effortful thinking. It's best used when there are instructions or someone is trying to memorize something. It wouldn't be relevant to the situation of this experiment. Trial and error would not have worked in this experiment either. Trial and error is a system of using different methods to achieve a goal and observing the outcomes of each method. More simply put, practice makes perfect. It wouldn't have been relevant to the situation of this experiment either. Insight would not have worked in this experiment either. Insight is a sudden realization or deeper understanding of something. Nate couldn't have simply figured, oh, I have to say ball when he blows his nose. The following is a reenactment. I wasn't able to record the results of the test on video because it would have been too easy for Nate to figure out my real motives. In the reenactment, I will be playing the part of both experimenter and participant. I had to spread the experiment over the course of several days. The first 2 days were strictly training. I would consistently blow my nose, then say the word wiffle immediately afterwards, and await his response ball. I would do this at least 20 times every 3 hours of interaction. Nate didn't catch on. He simply thought I had a stuffy nose. He responded correctly every time both days. On the 3rd day, however, I tested Nate. I blew my nose and did not say wiffle. He, no doubt, replied with ball, not realizing I hadn't even said wiffle. In this particular case, there was no discriminant or generalization, and no maintaining was necessary. After organizing the data and analyzing all the results, did the experiment work? Yes, the experiment was a great success. The participant was given the new stimulus and replied with the pre-existing response. The subject was afterwards extinguished properly and debriefed. There weren't any intervening variables, although I had worried Nate might catch on the last few times I did the experiment. I don't know how the experiment could have gone any better. It seemed to be perfectly performed. The learning process went along smoothly without any intervening variables or distractions, and he replied every time without fail.